How to build a society out of ignorance, a society that will elevate people. Well, there is a shitload of work that's going to be needed for that. People will need to take care of a lot of things. First and foremost, you need a very rigorous structure to start with. You need a structure that will remind people of spirituality as is, of it as a simple process that is measured in how much you can detach yourself from the mind, how much you can also help others, how much you can remind yourself to be yet a child again, but a conscious child, the one who would play, the one who would live life and enjoy it the way you did when you were young. Not a dumb child who just has expectations of everyone to do their own bidding and that's it. And you need a society that will promote music that actually elevates life instead of music that promotes death, that promotes suffering for the name of art, for the name of culture. And, just thinking about the drama of having been abandoned by I don't know what fucker who never cared by you, even never cared for you in the first place. You need music that can elevate, not music necessarily made on machines. That music doesn't elevate shit. Yes, music like it was back in the times, music that could make people feel alive and actually dance to life, not dance to their own misery. You need arts that will elevate people. You need a society that will promote people's hobbies and include some of the people's hobbies into the market, right? And allow them to simply do that which they do, maybe work half time as well and have more time for their hobby so that they can develop, and you can end up with people doing stuff for the others and creating communities that support one another, you know because in cities it is easy to become ignorant, because when you look at things in the countryside, there are small communities of people who kind of know one another. They know where their food comes from when they put it on their plate. In the city, you know nothing. You don't know your neighbors, most likely. You don't even care most about them because, well, you live in a society which is very flat, which is very square, right? And those shapes geometrically have a very great influence on you because they all act as energy blockers. They all act as inducing limitedness in your thinking. Yes, all cities are designed in a way that, occultedly speaking, they will influence you. They will promote your ignorance. They will promote the idea of living in a prison, right? In the prison of the mind, because you are stuck in very rigorous shapes, in very rigorous physicality, which does not promote life to exist, right? When you look at everything like blocks of flats, everything is designed to be just like that, right? No rounded shapes, no nothing, because rounded shapes allow life. Rounded shapes allow you to also think more vigorously, to embrace life in a merrier way, right? But when we speak about rigorous shapes, right? The more ignorant a society is, the more rigorous the shapes will be, the more lifeless they will be. And when we look at one of the most lifeless experiences of life, or let's say experiences of life through architecture, what can we think of? Well, we can only think of the communist brutalism, right? Because brutalism is designed by communism, which is the apex of ignorance, right? Not only do you suffer from the highest levels of not caring and not being connected with anything, but you also impose that, and you must make it that everyone thinks and functions the same, right? This is the epitome of ignorance. There is nothing below that. Below that, there is only one level which all narcissists hate, because that level is a level in which everyone hates their existence so much that they can only think about self-destruction, right? So if we are to think about life as is, you have to design a very rigorous support for this enlightenment, right? Because you're not going to elevate people um like over the night. You're gonna have to design schools that don't teach people to survive barely, right? You're gonna have to to teach people how to make use of money, how to make use of their own talents. You're going to have to design classrooms that, and especially teachers, that will no longer be just teachers, because teachers, in a way, in this sick society, they are kind of worthless, unfortunately. It is a truth that a lot of people don't want to comprehend, but a teacher can easily be replaced by an AI. If a teacher is capable of being didactical, well, that part, didacticism, is hard to replace by an AI. But a teacher who's just some dumb fuck who tells you certain things and teaches you the same stuff that they've been teaching 20 years ago, and they are just, like a handbook teacher, that they just read some stuff and tell you that same stuff and even have expectations that you learn it by heart the same way that they know it. That's more or less a communist teacher. They don't care about your uniqueness. They don't care about anything. These people can easily be replaced by softwares that can be made to act way better than most teachers in the world. I myself can actually create a few of these mini games in RPG Maker and teach children certain things about, let's say, the objects in the house, or how to learn their own language. Just like there are those games like, you find them on Steam, kanji battles, right? You can learn Japanese and some kanji by, fighting a so-called RPG game, where you fight those monsters and you can only beat them by choosing the correct reading for the specified kanji, right? You can create a school that teaches children things like this, and instead of having children pitted one against the other by even specifically stupid teachers, right, who deliberately give bad marks just so that they create, in their ignorance, in their hatred towards life, they create pain in children and programming in them that their whole life is nothing else but this rat race for the best marks. Because once you have stupid parents and who can only care about their children's marks, and you have idiotic teachers who only care to give marks to children, then you're gonna do nothing else than abuse. You're gonna raise another monstrous generation that should be treated worse than man killing, right? Because when you kill, at least their business with this whole world is over. But when you teach people to be nothing else but 1% of their whole potential, that should be worse than murder, honestly, right? Not that murder isn't horrible anyways. So if we are to think about things like this, there is a whole rigor that needs to be designed, a rigorousness that has to be put in place, right? You need leaders, not politicians. Yes, you need a great place of power, not a government, because governmental works means govern the mental part of humanity, govern the minds of people so that you shape their reality into a very diminished one, right? Where they don't matter, they don't care, and everything around them supports that, right? Because when you put ignorance in a society that flows with life, they can only be uncomfortable, right? Because when you put them in a society like, for example, a brutalist society, where all the structures are, shaped in the way they are, with square edges, that does not support the flow of life. That supports only death and stagnation. That is why people find it so easy to not think about anything, to not move in life, and to not have any aspiration. Because every geometry around you has a certain shape. Why do you think when you look at a forest, no trees grows perfectly straight, right? Because life isn't necessarily straightforward. Life is all about being able to bend, right? But in a brutalist society, there is no such thing as a bend, because if something bends, the whole society collapses, because everyone must function the same, right? So when we think about life in general, people have to comprehend that life is way more complex than just that. You need to remind people of their spiritual part. You need to teach people in lively ways. You need to make games for children, not to necessarily make fun, but to coexist, to work together to solve puzzles, right? To make every class, you can make each and every classroom, each and every lesson, you can make it like a mini game where children have to figure out together the answers and work together, so that you have a society of people that actually knows how to work together as humans. Because it all starts in schools. If you have dumb teachers who just promote separation, violence almost, even hatred in between children that someone got a better mark. You'll have ignorant teachers who will give bad marks deliberately to a child or to some children because they are a different race, they are a so-called minority. There are all sorts of these labels of ignorance, or just because they don't like those children and they want them to suffer. And if someone is given unjustly higher marks, it is only done ignorantly, because the ignorance of a teacher can only exist if all the children give all their attention to the teacher, and at the same time the children fight one another, right? Because no school wants your children to know how to handle society. Why do we have so many youth that feel dead once they come home from school? Because their whole life is programmed to be nothing else but get the higher marks, right? And get the higher marks for what? To finish school, and then you become a slave of society who doesn't know how to act in a human way. You see many people falling on the street, being hit by cars, and then everyone around just sits around, right? Because they were programmed since schools, since kindergartens, that their whole life is a race, right? That when someone suffers an accident, technically it is a good thing for them, because in this rat race, if someone suffers, well, it means they're not going to be able to compete against you. That is why you see them standing there in a conflict, that the pain of that person kind of reminds them that they are somewhat human, but their whole programming says, no, just keep on the rat race. That person is down, so you have less competition, right? If you go to the highest levels of ignorance and you study it from within your own system, you can figure out how sickness functions and how ignorance functions. You can even figure out how to pull them slowly out of that, because you will only build a society that relinquishes ignorance throughout generations of people, right? Because once you no longer make lessons in the classroom that, for example, are nothing else but children fighting for the attention of the teacher, right? What do you see? The teacher asks a question and you see the poor children, they're fighting for the attention of the teacher, and narcissistic teachers will enjoy that. They will love having the power to choose who to give them the answer, right? And give you little rewards. Those marks don't necessarily mean anything. At the same time, the teacher has the highest power. They are the ones who actually decide more or less your destiny, because the marks that you get in school can actually have an influence on whether you will be able to follow that which you like or not, right? You have to build a society where children can choose what they like, but in order for them to choose, their parents must be conscious enough and patient enough to take children to multiple possible fields, right? Because the child will always like the first thing that they will see, but it's not necessarily that which they should seek to do in their life. Because everyone was designed with some talents, but the sick society's purpose is to make sure that no genius is ever developed. Or if a genius is ever developed, they must be shamed, guilted, and pulled down. They must be made to suffer, because if they are made to suffer, they will only end up using their genius to provoke and deal and cause even more pain and suffering. So hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness, and it can go on endlessly, but people can hopefully understand that you just cannot pull ignorance out of their comfort that easily. They will fight against you, yes. The moment you try to change their comfort, they will try to challenge you. They will try to crumble your society because they cannot live with that. A conscious society has to finally realize the fact that a lot of the ignorance will actually perish, because they will either commit suicide or they will simply fight against you till their death, right? They will try to topple your government, and there will be forces from within your country, NGOs and such, or from outside your country, who may also seek that. Because a sick society can only proliferate if the whole planet is ignorant, right? If people start waking up here and there, you will see that there will be revolts organized by the ignorance. You have to create communities of people that can live together, that can get to know one another, that can know what their humanity is, what their emotions are, how they function, how they can make use of things like that. You have to create schools that teach people about personalities as well, how to identify abusive patterns, how to identify ignorance, right? You have to design a society that is extremely uncomfortable for the ignorance, and very comfortable, but not necessarily comfortable, still challenging for those who are conscious, because you need to have, spare places for new artists. You need to promote artists who promote life, not just computer-made music that doesn't make any sense and is just some loops, because those loops are nothing else but the brutalism in architecture. They are nothing else but supporters of simple-mindedness, of lack of vision into the future, of everything. Because your environment, right? You need to build a society that creates an environment that actually supports its people, right? Because the environment has the highest power ever against you, right? Or for you. Yes, you call it a success when you turn your environment into something that is supporting you. Because you can have the highest genius into the world. If you live in a house or an apartment where other people suffered, and maybe you even suffered in there, all those energies in there will definitely have a very powerful influence on you. They will pull you down. You will feel tired, and you're not gonna know why, right? Your own environment is always fighting against you because it was designed to fight against you through its geometry, and then through the suffering of the people around you and the people within the same house as you, right? That is why a lot of people feel very tired even in their comfort zone, right? You need to design a society that reminds people to keep moving outside, to have time to do health stuff, right? Like running around, jogging, or to have more people being hired, to have less taxes for companies that have hired people, so that people can work, for example, 4 hours instead of 8 and have double the shifts. And when you have societies like these, people will have more time to deal with their own problems, to deal with their families, because a sick society's purpose is to design a society where everyone functions the same, just like in communism, right? You have women working, you have men working, and no one to take care of the children. The children have abandonment issues, and they will be integrated easily into this sick society that wants them, it wants to proliferate out of their ignorance, right? So you have to design generations that are no longer as traumatized, right? So that when they are traumatized, they will propel that. You want people to propel consciousness, to propel humanity, to propel emotions. You want televisions to, mass media, to promote the good things, not just the accidents, the car crashes, the deaths, war, and the such, right? They will always be part of society. But you can have televisions to also support people who helped other people, right? You need to make this one mainstream. You need to make spirituality mainstream. When's the last time you heard your spirituality being spoken of? When's the last time you heard your priest to teach you or to remind you that you need to be in touch with God, right? Because the biggest fakeness of all Abrahamic religions is that someone else is the only one who can connect you to your creation, right? This is not real. This is only a tool of control. This is only a tool of sickness. And when you have people worship this thing, you can only comprehend how deep this sickness has become, right? This will slowly and surely be erased once you create a society that supports the idea of development of the individual, of developing the mind, developing the emotions, making people learn how to make use of their emotions, right? And to promote emotions, to promote people joining groups, working together, not just working one against the other like they usually do in the corporate world where nobody cares about the others, right? And you need to make a society that is uncomfortable for the ignorance, where they constantly have to learn, they constantly have to adjust, they constantly have to listen to music that is no longer computer music, that is no longer primitive music, right? Music that teaches them or reminds them of their emotions, right? Of schooling that no longer is just nothing else but a rat race, of jobs that actually require you to assume responsibilities, right? And the more people join in this, the more ignorance will have to abide to the new ideas, right? Slowly and surely, these things can be done. It will happen. These things will happen, but it is up to us as humans and to these current generations whether we want that to happen in hundreds of years, thousands of years, or if we want such a society to bloom into life sooner than ever, right? Hopefully this video raised a bit of awareness. You are appreciated. Take care. Enjoy life. This being said, Ferenjan Board signing out.